Have you ever found yourself watching Peppa Pig and wondering, what in the world happened to the humans in this universe? Where could they possibly live? Or where did they go? Yeah, we ask ourselves those exact same questions. And that's why we decided to investigate deeply into what might have happened to humanity in this dimension where the main character is a little pink pig and her family. The Past Revealed. First of all, we have to remember that in the episode Stone Age Granny, Granny Pig explains what the olden days were like. She describes regular humans like us living in caves, eating fruit, and hunting mammoths. She's not talking about pigs in costumes. She's talking about people. Humans. This means that humans weren't just a quick visit, but that they were the beginning of it all. Granny talks about them with the same certainty that your teacher talks about the Romans. And this raises a question that she doesn't answer. If humans built the caves and started this whole history, they didn't just vanish into thin air overnight. A species doesn't lead history and then sneak out the back door. It grows. And the timeline is right there. Cave people at the beginning, but we also find other evidence of human presence in Peppa's world. In fact, we know that there are even some, albeit a few, living alongside all the animals that live like normal people in this highly exotic world of the Pink Pigs cartoon. Beyond the animals. The truth is that the Peppa Pig universe is home to some pretty bizarre beings. We're not just talking about animals that talk and walk on two legs, but also talking vegetables. For example, we have Mrs. Carrot, Little Sprout, the Blueberry, and, of course, the most famous of all, Mr. Potato and Super Potato. They are massive celebrities in this universe. In fact, a lot of people thought they were the exact same potato until they appeared together in the same episode. But if vegetables coming to life is already an absurd mystery, the actual existence of humans becomes an almost unsolvable enigma. But we say almost because you'll notice that some representatives of humanity have actually shown their faces in the series. And they aren't just anybody. In the episode Santa's Visit from Season 3, Peppa gets sad thinking she didn't get a present until the jolly old man himself shows up to hand-deliver hers. He is not an animal in disguise, like a daddy pig Santa, but a classic human gentleman with a white beard. Then, in the episode The Queen, we meet another human. The Sovereign of England decides to give an award to the hardest working person in the country, which is Miss Rabbit, with her endless jobs. Soon the animals visit the palace and play jumping in muddy puddles with the monarch. The bizarre detail? She is a human governing and leading an entire country of anthropomorphic animals. Finally, in the episode The Police Station, the police keep lost items, including a treasure chest. Suddenly, a 100% human pirate shows up at the door to get his gold back. Upon seeing the police, he gives up and leaves so he doesn't get arrested. The big question that remains is, if Santa Claus, the Queen, and a pirate are humans, where is the rest of the world's population? More humans. And incredibly enough, a lot of people never notice this, but there are strong indications that the society and cities that Peppa and her friends enjoy today were actually all built by humanity. In fact, we could say that various pieces of evidence keep popping up right on your screen while you innocently watch some Peppa episodes. In the episode about America, Peppa points a telescope at the Statue of Liberty, a giant human woman watching over the city. Peppa looks straight at her and says, "Look, a big lady with an ice cream." She is so used to human presence that a 300-foot-tall statue barely gives her anything to talk about. Another piece of proof we found is in the episode Grandpa Pig's Pond, where Grandpa digs up a gold coin, takes it to the museum, and it's confirmed as real. What is on the coin? A Viking helmet, a beard, and a human face. In other words, humans didn't just pass through there. They ran things long enough to put their own faces on the money. On top of all that, in the episode Rescuing Miss Rabbit, the pig family is in the library. And as the camera pans across the shelves, we see a rhinoceros reading a book with two humans on the cover, indicating that this is a story about humans, printed and available for reading today. Actually, given everything we've talked about, a human being probably wrote that book. The fact is that human culture didn't die. It became a library collection, which is a great indicator that this world might still be packed with humans, even if they are only sculpted or printed.
Before we continue, just a quick heads up. If you also enjoy movies, series, and cartoons, click the subscribe button right now, all right?
Real humans. Aside from all these human beings we mentioned, like Santa Claus, the pirate, and the Queen, there are still some humans that exist in this universe that we haven't talked about. The main one, and the one few people remember or know exists, is the biggest proof of all. She isn't a statue or a face on a coin. She is a real flesh and blood kid who is also Peppa's friend, and her name is Daisy. Daisy first appeared in the movie Peppa Pig, My First Cinema Experience, and has shown her face in several live shows. She is not an extra. She is part of the gang, a little girl in overalls and pigtails who plays with Susie Sheep and Danny Dog. And guess what? No character treats this as something weird. Okay, we know she is played by an adult, but in the story, she is a child. Besides, think about it with us. Why would the cartoon give Peppa a human friend if humans weren't part of her world? You don't just accidentally toss a real human kid into the middle of the playground. Furthermore, Peppa's product line features a little book called My Daddy, which is a custom-made product focused on family gifts and keepsakes, often for Father's Day or birthdays. In them, the real-world child and their family member become the main characters of the story alongside Peppa and Daddy Pig, showing that the series really does have a design ready to represent human beings that follows a very similar style to the animal characters, only as regular people, just like you and me. Scattered around the world? Given everything we've seen and heard, a pretty bizarre theory emerges. In reality, humans never left. They just don't live in Peppa's town. Think about it. Peppa's town is tiny. A few houses on hills, a supermarket, and Miss Rabbit literally doing every available job. That isn't the whole world, it's just a village. And as it happens, it's the little corner run by the animals. But the rest of the world? It still belongs to the humans. That's why their stuff is everywhere. The roads, the money, the books, the giant statue in New York. The animals didn't build any of that. They simply moved into a world that humans had already set up, like renting an already furnished house. This is very reminiscent of the book Animal Farm, but the Peppa version is way more chill. The animals didn't take over the entire world. They got a little town and thought, yeah, it's nice here. The Queen stops by, gives a little wave, and goes back home. Santa visits once a year and leaves. It's as if there was an agreement. The animals get Peppa's town, and the humans get the rest. It would practically be as if that place were some kind of untouched sanctuary, or as some would call it, an animal reserve, Animal Farm. However, beyond this sinister possibility we just mentioned, there is another answer that is actually a fascinating and even darker theory. What if we told you that everything indicates that the Peppa Pig universe, which was created by three friends, was actually heavily inspired by George Orwell's classic book, Animal Farm? If you aren't familiar with it yet, in this literary work, the animals on a farm, which are bulls, cows, sheep, horses, and rabbits, unite, start an aggressive revolution, and kick the human owner out of there. From then on, the animals start running their own society, more or less like what we see happening in Peppa's world. And guess who become the great leaders and brains of this new order in the book? If you thought the pigs, you hit the nail right on the head. In fact, some scientists to this day consider the cute, mud-loving swine to be the most intelligent species of all, exactly like Peppa's family. If this theory is real, it means that, in the past, the animals of that universe revolted and kicked the vast majority of humans out of the cities. They only made an exception for the Queen, out of diplomacy and tradition, for Santa Claus, because he's a magical entity, and for isolated pirates at sea. Man, if this is true, it is completely insane. Fate of the exiled humans. But if all of this is true, where were the humans banished to after this revolution? And surprisingly enough, The definitive answer is in the very first cartoon made by the creators of Peppa Pig themselves, The Big Knights from 1999. The cartoon tells the story of Sir Morris and Sir Boris, two gigantic human knights who fight against ogres and witches. Sounds like a typical medieval story, right? Wrong. Despite wearing armor, there is modern technology in the cartoon, though in a very precarious state. Rusty tractors, landline phones, and tube TVs. There are even power grid networks in this world. This proves that their story doesn't take place in the Middle Ages or anything like that, but rather in the present day, in the exact same timeline as Peppa. The entire human population was expelled by the animals, lost access to global infrastructure, and was forced to live in exile in an isolated country, having to restart civilization from scratch. That's why they live in squalor and use scrap technology. The final proof? The kingdom where these human knights live is called Barovia. On the official map from the cartoon, Barovia borders the land of the vampires. And who's the Peppa Pig character that speaks with a foreign accent, misses her homeland, and has no reflection in the mirror? Madame Gazelle. Peppa's teacher is a centuries-old vampire who came from the land neighboring the exiled humans. This completely connects the creators' two works once and for all. Humanity lost the war, was banished to Barovia, and today pigs walk on two legs, rule society, and act exactly like the humans they replaced. If all this is true, it would definitely be something the Peppa cartoon would make a point of never confirming. But it kinda makes sense, don't you agree?
We've reached the end of this video, but if you like having your mind blown, this is the right place. That's why we left 2 really good videos for you to click, watch, and best of all, stay with us.